argument after argument, disagreement after disagreement. Eventually it gets to the point where one or neither party can take it anymore, and someone ends the relationship, and that relationship fails. Of course, relationships can end amicably, and it could be a mutual respecting of parting ways, and you guys just weren't meant to live together for a long period of time and build a life together and a family. But that's not what we're going to focus on here, because I don't think that's why most relationships fail. Most relationships fail due to a communication error, some sort of argument, and disagreements between each individual that can't be worked out because you're not seeing something that the other person is seeing, and you're too stuck in the bias of your own reality. There is a very, very insidious negative bias we all partake in almost every single day, and that is the fundamental attribution error. And for me, this was the bias that I would succumb to every single time my partner would do something I didn't like. That was also behavior that I did, but I didn't see it as a personality error. There's a lot of things I can think of that I did wrong in previous relationships, but this one is the one I catch myself doing the most, and I think led to the most problems in previous relationships. And I'm finally getting to the point where I observe this phenomenon when it happens, and I stop myself before I let my emotions kick in. Then that leads to some sort of disagreement, which then leads to us having that really weird period after arguments that I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced, where the mood is just, the vibes are just off when you guys hang out again. If you're not living together, or if you're living together, you're still talking, but there's that tension, that unspoken tension that feels weird. I know you want to avoid that more often, because I certainly wanted to in the past. So let's talk about the fundamental attribution error. What is it? The fundamental attribution error is when we attribute others' behaviors to their personality while we attribute our behaviors to our external circumstances. So let me give you an example of how this could play out in a real life scenario. And I'm hoping I can think of more on the fly after this first one, so I can just continue exposing myself, and maybe you can relate or identify to things I've done too, and you can be like, oh shit, yeah, I'm guilty of that. So this first one was something early on in our relationship. My current fiance, who was my girlfriend at the time, she would pretty consistently be late to our hangouts. And to me, that signaled that she didn't really care about making the absolute most of our time together when we would see each other on the weekends. I attributed her behavior to her personality. And yeah, there's the possibility that, she is bad with time management, and that leads her to wait a little bit too long to get ready and then come over. But I immediately attributed her behavior to, she doesn't care about me as much. And I didn't really have much evidence to go off that sort of statement, other than sometimes she's late to our hangouts. Now, when I was late, this is funny, because I've been late quite a few times to our hangouts. We've decided on a time, let's say 6:30. Okay, I'm going to drive over to you. I could easily think about how long it's going to take, because there's a lot of traffic around 6:30 where we live, and I know it's going to take a little bit longer than I anticipate. I could prepare for that, but I didn't. I didn't prepare for that. And I can think of one clear instance in which I was late, and immediately I attributed that behavior to my external circumstances. I said, well, I'm usually never like this. It's because of the traffic. It's because, I was dealing with other things that got in my way. And, it was all these things happening to me. That's why it happened. It's not because I'm just a late person. It's not because I wasn't prepared. I refuse to take responsibility for my behaviors. And yet, when someone else exuded the exact same action, it's because they don't care. It's because of their personality. That is something we do all the time with our partners. When our partner does some sort of behavior that we think is deceitful or hurtful or wrong, firstly, there are things that are inherently objectively wrong, and Of course, if you have a behavior your partner is continuously doing, you have to communicate to that to them in a very calm, collected manner. Like I talked about in a previous video, it's just like, hey, I notice sometimes that you do this and you might not be aware of it, but it makes me feel like this. So I would really appreciate it if next time you could think about what you're doing and instead do this. It would make me feel a lot better and have better feelings around that situation. That's the best way to calmly communicate. And if your partner is still not accepting that and listening to what you're saying and taking that in and actively trying to change, okay, well then any relationship is going to have problems because communication is at the heart of most problems. But for yourself as well, really truly look at the biases you have around your behaviors versus your partner's behaviors. And now we're going to get into how you can stop yourself from falling victim to this fundamental attribution error. And I say falling victim, that's kind of ironic because it's like you're playing the victim every single time you do this attribution error, but really you're the culprit. You are also part of the reason you did the wrong thing. It's not just because of your external circumstances a lot of the time. So the first thing you need to do when you get angry at your partner, ask yourself, why am I angry? What did they do? How did I perceive their actions? And what evidence do I have to prove that my perception is truth? What evidence do I have to prove that my perception of their actions are truth? Most of the time, when you really analyze and answer that question, you're going to see that you don't have that much evidence to support your argument towards a bad behavior that you don't want them to do. And instead, it has something to do with your biased way of thinking, perhaps an insecurity. Because a lot of the issues that arose in my past relationships they stemmed from an insecurity that I felt unsafe because of something my partner was doing, and it was their behavior. And yes, again, it's important to communicate, but also you have to look at yourself and ask yourself, why do I feel so insecure about this regular behavior my partner is doing? If it is a regular behavior, if it's not, again, this is all really contextual. If it's not a regular behavior and they're doing something you really don't like and it's objectively bad and you can objectively come to that conclusion, then you got to speak up and ask and communicate in the way I explained earlier. But if that's not the case, this attribution error could be due to you just not wanting to admit that you have this flaw that you don't want to take a look at. And the biggest eye-openers for me, the biggest opportunities for growth have been relationships because of behaviors that trigger me with my partner and reflecting on those relationships with that question. Thinking, why did this behavior trigger me? What evidence do I have to prove that this behavior is something instilled into my partner's personality? Or is it just because something actually did happen outside of their control? Or is the intention behind their behavior really as bad as I'm making it out to seem? Like, is your partner deliberately trying to sabotage your mental health when they do something unconscious to them? Or are you just insecure about that behavior because you don't feel fully safe and trust your partner? You really got to come to terms with those questions and stick yourself in a critical mindset, a critical thinking mindset. Let the emotions wear off before you angrily, with hostility, tell them about the situation, how awful it made you feel. Cool off and ask those questions. Come to a more objective conclusion and really communicate through this in a healthy, mature way. So notice this fundamental attribution error. Notice how often you attribute other people's negative behaviors to their personality, and yet when you do the same thing or something similar or any other negative behavior, you say, oh, well, it was that thing outside of me and catch yourself and start to notice and change that behavior within you. This takes a lot of self-awareness. It takes a lot of figuring out who you are, what triggers you, what helps you feel safe and secure in a relationship, so you don't feel confused about why you're angry at someone and then you just get into an argument. You instead are able to accurately and effectively communicate through that problem. That takes a lot of work on yourself and thinking about this whole process. And that's why I have my self-mastery school. This is a school full of people who will hold you accountable towards your goals and will hold you accountable towards actually figuring out who you are and what you want to do with this life. And a big part of that whole process comes through the self-mastery course within the school, which allows you to really dive deep into your own psyche and figure out why you keep getting so angry in relationships and you feel so unsafe and insecure and you don't trust your partners. It's all resolvable, and you can become a person that becomes more secure and trustworthy in relationships. And I know that because I applied everything within the self-mastery course, and now I'm engaged. So if you're dealing with any of those problems, you want to speak to a group of like-minded people who are really serious about becoming better, including myself, I would love to see you in there. The link is in the description. I would say I'd love you guys. I mean, I don't know, man. I do love that you guys watch my videos. I don't know you though, but thanks for watching the video.